Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Subscribing to My Podcast. Because I have a new guest on the show every week, it's very difficult to get consistent viewership. So if there's one thing that you can do to support me and the guest featured on my show, is by interacting with the video. You can always unsubscribe later if you hate me or the content. Without further ado, here's your episode with Jason Keith is the current provost at Iowa State University, and he just started the position a few years ago, but I'm really excited to interview him. I met him personally a week ago, and we had a great conversation about what this episode would look like, but this is my journey of interviewing as many of the Iowa State leadership staff as I can. But Jason, I want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and then tell some of the viewers some of the important things that they might want to know about you.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me to talk to you today. I'm excited for the opportunity. I actually started my job as Senior Vice President and Provost here at Iowa State University on August 1st of this year, and it's been a whirlwind, but I've really enjoyed my time here. Prior to joining Iowa State, I was the Dean of the Bagley College of Engineering at Mississippi State University. I held that job for about 10 years. And I had been at the university for a couple years before that as department head in the School of Chemical Engineering. I started my faculty career at Michigan Technological University, or Michigan Tech, located in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I was there for 11 years, and I really enjoyed teaching and research and got really excited about doing institutional level service, which inspired me to look at leadership positions, and one thing led to another, and now here I am at Iowa State. Super excited to be here.
Yeah, and I'm super glad that you're here too. I know that when people hear the term provost, they're not super familiar with what that even means or what the job position goes. So I guess to you, and then maybe definitionally, what does provost mean and what does your position hold?
Yeah, so thank you so much for asking that question, because I get asked that by people all the time as well. And so really my job is providing leadership over the academic division of Iowa State University. If you look at the org chart, there's several different classifications or divisions that fall under the leadership of President Wendy Winterstein. And so that includes all of the divisions inside of the president's office, but there's also a senior vice president for student affairs. There's a senior vice president for operations and finance. There's the vice president for university human resources, and then there's the general counsel and chief risk officer. And then the last division is the academic affairs division, which is what I'm responsible for. So in my role as senior vice president and provost, all of the academic colleges, of which there are 7, as well as the 60 plus departments that are underneath those colleges, are all under my responsibility. Any of the students that are participating in degree programs that are part of those departments are part of my responsibility. That also includes units like the Graduate College, Enrollment Management, the University Library, as well as the Vice President for Research and the Vice President for Extension and Outreach. All of those are under my responsibility. And so that comprises 1,750 faculty, over 2,000 merit and professional and scientific staff, over 30,000 total students, of which there's 25,000 undergraduate students, a little bit over 4,000 graduate students, and over 700 professional students that are enrolled inside the College of Veterinary Medicine. That also includes all of the research activity that occurs on campus, which is approaching essentially $400 million. So it's an exciting opportunity to really advance an incredible university like Iowa State to the next level.
And this is really exciting too, because I feel like when you look at what Wendy Winterstein does and you think about like the dean of students, it's not intuitive what roles she's performing, but with you, you have a section of academics, you have a section of research, you have a section of all these things. So I guess when you're doing day-to-day stuff, like what does a day look like for you? Or like what are some of the decisions that you make on a day-to-day basis?
So one of the things that's great about my job is that every day is different. And that's really one of the benefits of being faculty or involved at a university is you can kind of chart your own course for what you want to do. So I'm an early riser, and because of the time change, I'm getting up even earlier than normal. This morning I got up at 3:45 a.m.
Oh my gosh.
I did a workout at home, went for a walk, had breakfast, got myself ready, and I was in the office about 10, 15 minutes before 6. I jumped onto my email. There were some emails lingering from the weekend, and I answered those. Started planning out some things that I want to work on later on this week. So we have a Iowa Board of Regents meeting coming up in a couple days, and so there are some things I needed to review for that. There's some, I had to make a phone call to talk to someone that works in a different office, so I sent a text message, and we actually called twice before 8 o'clock and got that question resolved. And again, each day is different. So this morning, every Monday and Wednesday, the president has a meeting of her senior leadership team, and I already listed all the people that are part of that group. And so we met from 8 to a little bit after 9 to talk about what's ahead for the week, and just so that we're all coordinated. President Winterstein is the most collaborative leader I've ever worked for, and I can say that even after partnering with her for 3 months. She goes around the table and asks us our opinion on all these issues that are in front of the university, and so I have a chance to say, I think this is something that we should consider, or if someone says something, it's like, I disagree with that idea, we can put everything on the table and not be criticized for that. It's a true brainstorming session. It's really meant to inform the president of sort of where we think the issues are. I followed that up with a meeting with a consultant that the university has hired to look at how we do the marketing of the university and how we brand Iowa State University. So I had that meeting. Then I met with the dean of the graduate college for 30 minutes. You had met, when we did a preparation meeting for this, you had met Rob Schweers, who's my communications person in the provost office. He had a meeting after my meeting. He was with the president and the other communication leads, so we touched base on the outcomes of that meeting. He helped prepare some remarks that I may need to deliver at the Board of Regents meeting. Then I met with the leadership of the American Association of University Professors chapter here at Iowa State. So we talked about some ideas that they had to bring in a speaker to talk about some things in regards to free speech and academic freedom. So we talked about that. We talked about some other issues that are important for faculty. They gave me time to eat lunch today, so I had done some cooking over the weekend. I love to cook, and so I prepared Mediterranean rice, and so I ate that in my office. Then at 1 o'clock, I had a meeting with some faculty from the College of Business. We're doing a search for the new dean of the Ivy College of Business, and so the faculty wanted to share some of their insights about an area that's very important for them, that they've really been growing, that they want to see leadership from the next dean from, and so I learned sort of their perspective on that. Then I met with my associate provost for academic programs, Dr. Anne-Marie van der Zanden, for an hour. I met a professor in industrial engineering for 30 minutes to talk about some ideas that he had to advance Iowa State, and now I'm here talking to you. And so the day is pretty full. In between some of those times, I'll be able to peek at emails and look at some things to make sure that I'm keeping up to date with everything else that's going on at the university. So in any given day, I'll have anywhere between 6 to 12 meetings, ranging from 30 minutes to an hour. It sounds busy. It is. But again, it's fun because each meeting's different. I get new ideas from people. I exchange sort of my thoughts from the perspectives that I've had over my career at a couple other institutions of things that they might want to look at within their programs that could really help change the opportunities for students at Iowa State.
Wow. So this is kind of what I'd expect from a leadership position, that you're meeting with everybody, under you, all of these departments. And it sounds like you're hearing a bunch of different perspectives. You're providing your own. And it sounds like you're kind of this central head of decisions when it comes to what should be happening academically, research. And so I guess my next question is, where are your values and morals when it comes to making these decisions? Like, what are some of these, like, the stones or foundations that you're using when you're making these decisions?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so if you think back to the previous question you asked about what my day is like, I talked about how collaborative President Winterstein is. And so I see how she leads her unit, of which I'm part of. She's my boss. And I feel like I need to follow that style in how I lead my direct reports. In addition, it creates opportunities and inspires me to collaborate with the other people that are part of that senior leadership team. So I've set up monthly meetings with each of the other senior vice presidents and vice presidents that are part of that smaller group so we can stay coordinated on things. And then we have a meeting called Provost Council that meets every other week for 2 hours, and that's all the deans, the vice presidents that report to me are also part of that group. And we really talk about items of interest to the academic and research division here at Iowa State University. There's some things that I want everyone to hear about, so we put that on the agenda. But when there's time, I ask everyone to kind of go around the table and share something new from their unit so that everyone else can learn what's going on. But I feel like my style is to be sort of like a matchmaker and a cheerleader. And so I need to find out what are the great things that our students and our faculty are doing, and how can I promote and celebrate those things. And then also, how can I learn about what people's expertise and interest are and try to bring groups together so that they can work on new projects together so that it can, again, develop things that'll support both the students and the faculty here at the university.
Okay, so it's a lot of like collaboration, working together, trying to find the teams that fit. When you're having these meetings about branding, or you're having these meetings about like how should we represent ourselves as Iowa State, what do you value, or what are some of the things that you're saying like we should really make sure that we focus on this when we're branding Iowa State, or when we're talking about what we should look like? Like, what are some of the values, I guess, as Iowa State that you're really trying to push for, you're really trying to maintain?
Well, a university like Iowa State is a public land-grant university, and it was formed from the Morrill Act of Congress back in the basically 1860s time frame. And the goal of that act was to create institutions that train students in the skills that were required to impact the economy of the state. And so the traditional mechanisms that was done was through programs in agriculture and mechanical arts, which turned into engineering. And from there was a need for business. There was a need for providing general education. And so you had focus on, social sciences, English, foreign language. There was desire for, design, and the College of Design and some of the programs that they do in architecture. So all of these programs across the entire university sort of came out of that mission. And so in addition to just providing material in lectures inside of courses, one thing that's a true value of a land-grant university like Iowa State is experiential learning. So in addition to you going to class and me telling you something, if I'm your professor, I want to give you an opportunity to practice that in real life. And so we try to encourage students to get involved in what we call high-impact learning activities. We're inside of the Student Innovation Center, which allows for all kinds of high-impact learning. There's glass-blowing facility, there's space right next door for engineering competition teams. But there's also space for the College of Design where they're doing studio-type projects. There's space for, there's a printing lab, and there's textiles. There's the Human Sciences has a food lab that's here. The College of Business has a facility inside here focused on entrepreneurship. Agriculture and Life Sciences has a presence in this building. So it's really meant to bring students from all of the 7 academic colleges together to work together in new ways, but also through the curriculum in terms of doing laboratories, through capstone projects to make sure that you're solving a real-world project instead of just some theoretical concept. We want our students at Iowa State to understand the practical value of what they're doing and be able to go off and hit the ground running when they graduate. And that's why there's so many industries that are interested in hiring students that graduate from Iowa State. So it's really those sort of principles and values that are inherent to the formation of the university that I want to make sure that we're living out day in and day out forever, so that the students always receive that kind of training. And highlighting that to decision makers that influence the direction of the university is very important. Also, it needs to be presented to prospective students in a way that they get excited about coming to a university like Iowa State. There's a major for everyone here, and how do we work together to help each and every student find the right major for them as quickly as possible so that they can be happy as a student. They can be doing something that they really love to do, and it'll result in a positive outcome after they graduate, because they'll be, it'll change their lives. Getting a university education changed my life. It inspired me to pursue a faculty career and now an administrative career. And so I want to see that kind of desire and drive for our students and for our faculty.
Wow, I think that's truly incredible. I know that it gets presented to us that this is like a land-grant university, but I don't think I've ever thought about what it actually means to be a land-grant university. How does that affect the things that we're making? Mm-hmm. I guess my next question is you've worked in other universities, you've worked in other places, and you've worked in engineering departments, and then obviously Iowa State is a really successful engineering school, amongst other things as well. What are the differences that you've noticed from Iowa State to other universities? Because it seems like when you say what you just said, that sometimes I could think of other universities as well. But I guess, what are some of the differences that you've experienced in other universities compared to us? Yeah,
thank you for that question. I'm going to attribute this to some alumni that I was talking to at the football game this past weekend as a great example of this. And so I have iPhone for my telephone. You may have an Android or what kind of phone do you have?
An Android.
An Android. And so let's say that I was using an iPhone for 13 years and I was going to switch to an Android phone. It's still a phone. You can still make telephone calls with it. It still has apps. You can still read email. You can bring up a map to figure out how to get from here to the University of Northern Iowa, where the Board of Regents meeting is going to be. So there's all the same functionality that's there, but how you go about using that phone, that device, to help you answer questions and solve problems is a little bit different. And so each university is a little bit different. It's like having a phone with a different sort of operating system. And so you have to learn what's different about that, what the process is that you have to follow. And so how we develop new degrees at Iowa State is different than how new degrees were developed at Mississippi State or at Michigan Tech. How we go through processes to evaluate our faculty and staff every year is different. How we go through and make sure students have met degree requirements is different at each university. So it's a matter of understanding. It's still, the mission is very similar, to educate students and produce students with degrees, but how you go about actually accomplishing that, the process is a little bit different. So I'm learning, what those nuances are and trying to understand why is it that we do this way. Is there a way to streamline or make this process simpler so that faculty will be more interested in pursuing some of these multidisciplinary degrees with each other, create some incentives for that, as well as steering students into some of these new ideas that would really benefit them in their careers. I will say that my first job at Michigan Tech, that was also a public university, but was not a land-grant university. And so even though I was in a college of engineering with a mission of preparing students for industry, the viewpoint was maybe a little bit different, and it didn't have that central goal of economic development necessarily. And so there may be sometimes universities that where faculty want to solve a problem because they're just interested in solving that. Our faculty have the academic freedom here as anywhere else to question that, to try to solve that question. But many of our faculty that look at the mission of the university say, oh, it's like I came here because of what they do to put students into these jobs in agriculture, in manufacturing. And so how can I develop my course that really prepares students for that career? And so it just seems like the focus is a little bit crisper sometimes when you consider the role of this university when I compare it to others that I may have worked at.
Yeah, and that's really interesting too. I imagine when you're talking about the operating system, it's very experience-based. It's very like a lot of the things that you just covered with the fact that we're at Land-Grant University and how our story has grown from there. Mm-hmm. I am really curious about the decision-making process with academics, like how you make these plans. So I imagine that experience is a big part. What other factors are important when you're trying to make like the degree decisions? Like how do you even come up with a new degree perchance? Like how does this process even work for you?
Yeah, again, it's different at every institution, but in my past, in my job as dean, I worked with the department heads and the faculty to develop new degrees. And so let me give an example. So there was a proposal to develop a degree in artificial intelligence. We were talking about this when they have a program here, but we did not have one at my prior institution. So I talked to the department head who expressed interest in that. I said, okay, let's get a faculty group together and develop a listing of what those courses could be. Let's recognize that some of the courses as part of this fit really nicely with current courses as part of the curriculum in computer science and engineering. What are those courses? What new courses are needed? And how can we design the most efficient curriculum possible so that we can teach what's needed for students to be successful and not have an entire new slate of courses so that the cost to teach the program would be as low as possible. And that would allow us to be able to ask the university to provide new funding for faculty positions to be able to hire people in to teach those courses. And so to develop that curriculum, it really required coordination between my office as dean with the department head or department chair with the faculty to get on the same page about things. And then the approval process would have to go through multiple levels. Here at Iowa State University, that is run through the Faculty Senate. And so I meet every month one-on-one with the Faculty Senate President and President-elect. We meet for 30 minutes to an hour in my conference room, and so we just talk about issues that are of importance to faculty and of the administration. Then I have a 1 hour to 2 hour meeting with the Faculty Senate Executive Board, which has the chairs of all of their committees, and the leadership that's elected from each college. Their college caucuses elect people to represent them. And so a portion of that meeting, there's a presentation from the academic affairs chair to say there's a new degree that's being proposed or there's a certificate being proposed. Here's what it's about. They do 2 readings of that program, and that's something that has been approved by the college. It had been approved by the department. And at that, there was a vote basically of the faculty. So you can look at the documentation. It's on the Faculty Senate webpage, and you can see there's a degree that is actually going to be proposed at the board level in the future in integrated health sciences. But you could look back where it was agreed upon by the Faculty Senate, what the vote was. You can see how there were support letters from the colleges involved in teaching that. So it really shows the chronology of approvals that are part of that. If the same thing goes for changing curriculum. So if you have every few years when you're teaching curricula, it has to go through like accreditation process, as an example. And this is true for about 3/5 or 2/3 of all of the degrees at Iowa State. there's a process called continuous improvement. And so you look at all of your courses and say, is this relevant to the industry that's hiring students? You get feedback from the current students, you get feedback from the faculty, feedback from employers, and there's a process that's followed. And really it's about, do you have a documented process and are you following that? And so you really need to have a team effort towards working through this. As part of Iowa State's strategic plan, the president has challenged the university community to think of these degrees of the future. And so this integrated health sciences one, there's a game design proposal that was just approved in the last board meeting that's now official. But that took a long time of everyone to get coordinated and go through all of those approval processes. We don't just change something overnight. It really requires a team effort to get everyone on the same page.
Yeah, and that's super interesting. That was kind of exactly what I'm looking for, because I couldn't imagine how I would start creating a new degree from scratch, especially if I didn't have the qualifications. Like with AI, I know that would be like really interesting, to have, but I'm not qualified to do a degree. So that'd be really interesting. Are there any degrees that you particularly are passionate about, or maybe some that you would condone in the future, or some that maybe you're working on now that you're really excited about? Like, what does the future look like in terms of maybe new degrees, new certificates, stuff like that?
Well, Iowa State is a great institution. It has a wonderful reputation. I've known about it for my whole professional career. I've actually worked with and had collaborations with some of the faculty that work here at Iowa State that go back to when I was a young faculty. I've worked on committees with people that were either worked here or were graduates of Iowa State. So I've always looked up to the institution and saw it as a very forward-thinking institution. With that being said, some ideas. The university has a great reputation of teaching students, but also is a major research university with very high research activity as classified by the Carnegie Classification on Higher Education. And so the mission of this university is to educate and create students that have a mindset, that graduate, that have a positive impact on society, to solve real-world problems, to make the world a better place. At the same point, we hire great faculty that are excellent educators, but they're also outstanding researchers. And so supporting that research and growing graduate education is a key part of the university as well. And so as the university prepares and develops enrollment goals, they need to look at how do we have an appropriate mix of undergraduate programs, graduate programs, research in very important areas. One of the advantages of being at a university like Iowa State, it's very unique in that there's Ames National Laboratory, which is a Department of Energy laboratory facility. It's on our campus. That's a great recruiting tool to bring in faculty that are in STEM disciplines to the university, because they can collaborate very easily with a national lab, and they may have limited access if they're doing that from another institution. The average student at the undergraduate level, comes to Iowa State with one whole semester of advanced placement or dual enrollment credit from high school or community college. A third of the students come with a full year. And so that creates an opportunity that needs to be looked at, because some degree programs in some of the colleges could be reshuffled so that someone could, in 3 years, take the credits that they've earned and add credits to that and graduate with a bachelor's degree. That may be a great advantage for families that cannot afford 4 years of a college education, or some that have multiple children that they have to decide, do we send one child or two to a university like Iowa State? So there's potential savings from a tuition standpoint that we could harness by repackaging our curriculum in a way that someone could graduate in 3 years. Now, there's maybe other students that we want to take a different approach and say, you want to stay for 4 years, but instead of taking a fun class in an area that you're interested in, there's nothing wrong with that. You can do that, but why don't you start thinking about building a curriculum so that in 4 years you can finish your bachelor's degree and start taking classes that would count towards a graduate degree. So it could be possible that in 4 years, or 4 years plus one semester, complete your bachelor's and a master's degree, and they don't have to be in the same discipline. So how do we develop concurrent degree programs where these are already available at Iowa State in some ways, where you could start taking classes at the graduate level and double count the credits towards your undergraduate degree. It's all documented, but how do you streamline that process so that someone can sort of create their own mix of bachelor's plus master's degree programs? We need to start thinking about that when we recruit prospective students, to think about what can they do in 4 years at Iowa State and plan ahead towards what those opportunities are. Many of those degree pathways have not been formalized on paper, but I've challenged the deans to start talking to each other, to talk to their department heads, and to really facilitate discussions in a collaborative way to allow for some of those things. On top of that, are there degree programs that nobody in the country is offering that there may be interest in? What is the demand for certain skill sets across the country? We need to look at that very carefully and plan ahead, and maybe there's a new degree that we've never even thought of that someone may propose that would have really widespread appeal, that if Iowa State is the first university to offer a degree like that, it would bring in a lot of students. Given the fact that a lot of students, when they take jobs, they're working in industries that are really solving cutting edge problems, there may be a need in that industry to have additional skill set in, let's say, statistics or in project management or in some other area, technical communications, economics. Is there an opportunity to develop a short course where some faculty from the university would go to that industry site and teach up to 100 or 200 people for 2 days and come up with a different tuition model to provide that resource? Or do you say, we have this course on the books that is a 3 credit hour class, so that's 45 contact hours. Can we compress that course in a way and teach it in a way just for your employees so that they can get what they need? And then, now that you've taken that class, why don't you take this other class and look at putting together a 15 credit hour graduate certificate? And then, now that you've completed that graduate certificate, you're halfway towards a master's degree. And so again, we have to think about innovative ways to reinvent ourselves as a university to cater to our students. And it's not just the students that come here as 18-year-olds, but our alumni really want to instill a culture of lifelong learning. And so they need to be asking themselves, what's next? And so how can we be there to help them answer that question and get the education that they need to carry their business they're working for to the next level?
Wow, and that's really exciting, because you're speaking the language that I feel like a lot of students are wanting to hear, which is, how do I get my degree faster, more efficiently? How do I get it shorter? How do I get it specified? How do I have opportunities to grow? I guess when I asked that question, I was looking for, name 2 degrees that you think would be cool to add to Iowa State, but I feel like
that's really up to the faculty to come up with some of those ideas. I mean, I have ideas of my own, but I don't want to kind of force an outcome, right? So I really want to hear ideas from faculty and staff that could really help our students. So one thing that I've done since I started at Iowa State, I send out a note to the faculty and staff in academic affairs division. So on my second day, I sent out a welcome message explaining my background, how I got inspired to become a faculty, how as a faculty I got interested in academic leadership, and how it progressed to me taking this job here at Iowa State. The second message was on the beginning of October to all the faculty and staff, saying, hey, it's like I've gone with the president and I've visited every single college. We did a 1-hour town hall meeting where both of us answered some questions. It was a great conversation. Then I received a tour. I really enjoyed that. That's not the only time that I want to be in your unit. I want to come out and see the rest of campus. I don't want to be a prisoner in my own office. I want to be able to see what's out there on our beautiful campus. And if you want to meet with me, sign up with this doodle poll. And I had over 250 faculty and staff sign up. So now I've got the difficult job of going through and trying to find opportunities in my terrible schedule to meet with everyone. And so I've identified some dates, and I've scheduled the first 4 of those meetings in mid-November for 1 hour, where I want to sit down with the faculty and staff in groups of about 20, provide coffee and other refreshments, some snacks, and say, tell me about yourself. Tell me, what you love about Iowa State. Tell me some ideas that you have about Iowa State. How can we work together to make this great institution even greater? And so it's really about collecting that kind of feedback and then assessing, oh, wow, there's like 50 people that want to develop this new degree, and so let's look at that.
Yeah, which I think is just really cool. It's really exciting. I think it was just a different perspective on talking about academics.
We've heard about crowdsourcing, right? For looking at things to fund startups and those kind of things. It's 'cause generating those ideas is something that has to happen organically. Yeah,
which I feel like that's what probably the most of your position is to like manage so many people and to funnel all of their ideas into something that you can actually do. I think an interesting conversation with academics that I wanted to hear your opinion on is that I think students can get pretty frustrated that their degree and the classes that they're taking aren't only about the degree. There's a lot of other requirements that they have to take. There's like the world language requirement. There's the English requirements, all of these requirements that aren't necessarily dedicated to the degree that they're going to. How do you kind of qualm some of these pressures that students have that, what is the importance of having some of these classes in your degree that aren't necessarily dedicated to your degree?
So that I have my degrees in chemical engineering. And in my job here at Iowa State, I do hold a tenured faculty position as a professor in the Department of Chemical and Biological Engineering. So I'm qualified to teach and do research in that department. Do you know how much time I spend doing chemical and biological engineering at Iowa State University? It's a slim part of my job. I spent a lot of time using communication skills, using management skills, using leadership skills, things that weren't necessarily part of my engineering curriculum, but that I learned either from experience or from taking general education courses. The way I like to describe it is you could have the best idea since sliced bread and say, this is wonderful, I'm going to make this product that's incredible, everyone's going to love it. But if you cannot explain what it does, if you cannot explain why people would use it, you cannot explain how much it costs to make it, how much you can charge to sell it, and what the return on investment would be to your boss, if you can't explain that to your leadership, it's never going to happen. And so this is a university that encourages entrepreneurship. What I'm saying here applies to all institutions. I mean, President Winterstein has this Innovate at Iowa State theme. We have a lot of great students that, as part of their engineering courses or other courses, they do a capstone project. They might come up with a wonderful idea for a product. And that happens in all of our colleges across Iowa State. If I don't know what to do with that, I've got a great idea, I stick it on the shelf and it collects dust. That's a missed opportunity. But getting some of those technical communication skills, learning about entrepreneurship, having access to possibly business, having access to understand foreign language, to be able to, how do I market something like this to a different culture, may be very important. The university has an international presence, and so having those kind of skills is broader than that and allows you as a graduate to be more impactful to society. I was talking to some people earlier about some ideas. You asked, what's a good idea for a major? Well, cybersecurity is something that we have a degree in, but is there a way to combine cybersecurity with a foreign language? And so the threats that we may receive from a cyber standpoint to your bank account, to the home security alarm that you may have, to your health data, isn't necessarily going to be limited to English, right? And so understanding foreign language may provide additional experience and employment capabilities for you being a cybersecurity professional. being involved in, we have a large percentage of students, about 16% of our graduates, a huge percentage that do a study abroad experience. That is great, and it'd be wonderful to grow that even more. I never did a study abroad when I was a student. I did a lot of international travel as a faculty, as a department chair, as a dean. I want to create more international partnerships to create opportunities for students, but I go and I work when I'm on that, and we spend half a day when we get a tour from our hosts doing some sightseeing. It would be great to live for a semester in a country, take classes, learn something, but also experience that culture. Because when you look at solving a problem, you learn from the different thought perspective of the people that you're studying with. And so there's really big impacts that benefit from having that type of education that's offered at a university like Iowa State. So that was a long answer to hopefully answer a very specific question.
No, I think it does a good job. I just, you've probably heard this too, and this is a question that you probably have to balance a lot, is just how do I make the degree and then make it important, and then fill that degree with information that's usable. And we were talking a lot about applicable skills too, so I think that does a good job.
When I took an engineering course, there was a book that the professor had us read called The Ethical Engineer, and it's like, or no, The Civilized Engineer is what it was called. And I'm like, why do we need this? It's like, but it was about providing that breadth of knowledge, and it's like I really wanted to be involved in research, and I wanted to dive in and solve the most complicated math problem that would have some kind of engineering solution possible. And so, I didn't realize that I'd be using some of the skills that I was being taught until later when I had to go give a presentation for my research, and someone says, why is your work important? And I can say, well, we designed this system to allow for the catalytic converter underneath your car to heat up faster, to reduce emissions so that we have cleaner air. There was a reason why we solved that problem, was to reduce those emissions. But it was about a bunch of math that was involved and catalysis and everything else. But again, there was a broad impact of what we were doing, which was to have a smaller impact of using fossil fuels. But I could explain that because I had that background that opened my eyes to why are we solving these kind of questions.
Yeah, and I think that's super important too. Unrelated to the applicable skills, I think there's also a sense of importance to take classes that you don't want to take. I mean, to do things that are hard. So like I'm a psychology major, and of course I'm going to be doing statistics and other things when I do research. But for a lot of people, they don't need a math class. But I feel like the struggle that math gives you as an academic is really important, unrelated to that too.
Yeah.
So
well, you learn a lot of problem solving skills from that, but then there is a question. It's like, how much math do you really need? And that's something that, again, the faculty have to evaluate in terms of accreditation standards, in terms of where they think their graduates are going to work, in trying to design a curriculum that prepares their students. And we don't know when we're teaching any of our curricula what industry you're going to work with. With a psychology degree, there's tons of jobs that you could get employed in. We want to make sure that you would be successful in all of those. So there may be something that's taught to you that you would use in these industries over here, but you're going to be working in this industry, whereas your classmate may be working in this industry and use all of those things that you may think you might not need, but then the stuff that you found important for your job might not be for them. So it's really providing that exposure to what you need to be successful with that disciplinary degree for any type of job that you're going to work in.
Yeah, and this is super interesting. I wonder how do these things play when you're deciding how to do research or how to bring research into Iowa State. So I know that a lot of funding comes from research, and then there's a lot of our progress is shown in research. So how do you make decisions? What are some of your values when it comes to research at Iowa State?
So performing research is part of the function of the university, and it's very important, especially at a major research university like Iowa State. We're in the top 3% of universities in terms of research expenditures for universities that do not have human medical schools, essentially. So that's an incredible statistic, and it's something that we want to continue to grow and support to become even more prominent. That's going to require faculty that can raise funding to conduct research, but that's not to dismiss projects that might not bring in a lot of money but still have a huge impact upon society in terms of doing things that are relevant. Each individual faculty, when they're hired, we have the majority of our faculty are tenure track faculty, and so there's an expectation to, in addition to teaching and university or service to the profession, that they're engaged in research, and there's an expectation that they're performing research at a level that garners a reputation that other faculty from other institutions can recognize what they're doing and say, this is very important work. So each faculty has the academic freedom to work on research programs that they're interested in. Now, with that being said, a lot of the decision sort of comes down to the faculty in a department that's hiring them. So in my career, when I started, I talked to you about a problem I was solving in automotive emissions control. And so I was hired into a department that did a lot of work on mathematical modeling and chemical reactor design and emissions control. And so it was a good fit for me to be part of that department. Whereas the mission of other universities that I applied to, it wasn't as good of a fit, so I did not get an interview. And so as part of a faculty job application, they submit a multi-page research plan to describe the type of work that they want to do. And so when the department is looking to hire someone new that's going to be research active, they will look at the qualifications, the credentials of the faculty, the plans that they have, and make a determination, are they going to be a good fit inside of our department? What I tell the deans in my role, and what I used to tell the department chairs when I was a dean, was that we want to hire faculty that can do two things. They have the potential to be independent researchers. That is, you could lock them in this room and give them a computer and maybe some laboratory tools that they need to conduct their research, and they would be fine. They would be very successful doing that. You would want that they could be independent. But you also want to bring in someone that would be part of a team, that they would fit in and add value to the strength areas inside of your department. Or if your department or college was trying to establish themselves in a new area, such as cybersecurity or some new type of regional and community planning, or a new area inside of history that really hasn't been studied before, but it's been something that the university is trying to grow capacity in. These are areas that the committee needs to look at and evaluate and say, we have 2 people in this area. If we had a third, we would be really at a level that would be one of the best in the country, okay? And so that's a decision that they need to evaluate. But then when they're interviewing that person, in addition to them being capable to be an independent researcher, can they fit in and collaborate well, and do they add value to that team that's already in place? And that way, that allows the faculty to thrive independently, to contribute to a team, and sort of diversify their portfolio in terms of how they approach writing grants to bring in funding for their research, or collaborating with the others on a very large project that might involve a book or involve some other opportunity. That way, it allows the faculty to be more successful. And I encourage faculty, when I was dean, I would interview with all of the faculty when they were coming through. I don't have the opportunity to do that in my role as provost, but I do want to meet all of the department chair candidates that we have coming in, as well as the dean candidates, of course, because they would be direct reports to me, but to find out how do they fit in the context of the thrust area of the university. Do they fit the strategic plan of the university, the college, the department? There really needs to be all of those elements that are there. So that needs to be an important part of how that freedom to do research fits in for that person. That's not to say after someone gets tenure, they could reinvent themselves and work in a new area. We encourage those sorts of things, but again, it's a decision that we're not telling someone to do. We could say, hey, we think you have capacity to work in this area. we think you should write this grant. We think you should put this team together. Here's some seed funding for you to do that. That's, again, part of my job as a matchmaker to try to identify people that might work together in a new way.
Yeah, and I think that's an equally interesting area of your position. Although we are running a little bit out of time, I want to give you an opportunity to kind of close this episode out. If there's one quick message you could say to the listeners who have gotten this far, if it's something that you want to maybe advertise about Iowa State, or if there's one broad message that you want to give to the people that we talked about, this is kind of your opportunity to close the episode out. Otherwise, the floor is yours.
Yeah, well, thank you for that question. So I've only been at Iowa State for 3 months, and the campus has been super welcoming to me. Everyone's gone, above and beyond to introduce me to as many people as possible. I love the collaborative environment, the spirit of the faculty, staff, and students here. Everyone rolls up their sleeves and dives in to find a way to solve a problem. And again, I'm here to facilitate that. If there's prospective students out there, it's like we have a faculty that cares about you, that wants to see you be successful as a student, whether you're an undergraduate or graduate student. If you're considering working at Iowa State University, I'm a relatively new employee, but I've had a great support network here, and we really are putting together programs to help support people, to help them thrive and help them achieve their career goals. And so I'm thrilled to be here at Iowa State. My prior job was 13 years long. It was the best job that I ever had. It was the longest job I ever had, and I wanted to surpass both of those metrics. I'm already on the way towards this being the best job, and it's going to take a little bit more time to get to that longevity, but I'm super excited to be here. And if people have questions, they're welcome to send me an email. I read all my emails, and it might take a day or two for me to reply, but I look forward to hearing from all of you.
Well, Jason, you were terrific, and it was awesome hearing from you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah. Awesome.